This is Iowa Talking Points, The Candidates, produced by Studio 5 at Mudd Advertising, Totally Iowa Media, and News Talk 1540 KXCL, where you hear from the candidates in contested races in the June 2026 Iowa primary election. Now, Iowa Talking Points, The Candidates. From Studio 5 at Mudd and Cedar Falls, here is Jeff Stein.
Hello and welcome. There will be a new governor in the state of Iowa in January of 2027. It's an open seat this year due to the retirement of Governor Kim Reynolds after what will be nearly a decade of service in that job. There are 5 Republicans seeking their party's nomination to face a Democrat in the November general election, and one of those 5 joins us here at the Iowa Talking Points table today. He is Adam Steen. Mr. Steen, as noted, a Republican candidate for governor. Online, it's adamsteen.com. Mr. Steen, thanks so much for taking the time.
Jeff, thank you for being here. It's an honor to be here. Pleasure to be here.
Tell us what led you to make this run, and if I remember your background correctly, this is your first try for elective office.
Correct. This is my first time jumping into a political race. When I announced my candidacy a little over 7 months ago, we announced it down at our church in Pleasant Hill, and I was interviewed by a newspaper, and they said, "Why did you jump into this race?" And I said, "I've been planning and preparing for a moment like this for 15 years. And as I was planning and preparing, it seemed like things were going kind of back and forth in a zigzag. But now that I am in this race, I can look back, and my entire background is a straight line." And so it was very clear to me that it was time to jump into the race. And I jumped into the race to preserve and protect the culture of Iowa and preserve and protect the freedom that we have here in the state of Iowa.
What was lacking in the discourse in the campaign at that point that called you to make this move? Because it's a huge upheaval for a family. You had to leave your job,
yes,
which meant a whole different set of challenges. So what was not there that led you to say, I need to step up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before I decided to run, there were other names that were being tossed out that might be jumping in the race. And I'm not going to mention their names, but probably people could figure that out. And then I started to get some phone calls from different organizations, different influencers, community leaders. And then I had a conversation with my wife, and I said, "Hey, this may be the time to do this." And so she and I had a conversation with a very influential sort of politico, and we drove home, and I said, if we do this, and I think we are supposed to do this, I'm going to have to resign my job. We're going to leave a life of predictability. We're going to leave a life of comfort, and we are going to put ourselves into an atmosphere that we know not what is in front of us. And we both looked at each other and said, we have to do this. We've got 2 boys, Riker and Maverick. Riker's 10, Maverick's 8. We care about their future so much, and we care about the state so much. We felt that at that time, my background was custom fit for this position, and the time was custom fit for a time such as this, and we jumped right in.
We'll talk a little more about your background in another segment, but it's difficult to segment this because a decision like how do you run for governor,
it's all connected.
Everything. Yeah. What's the number one challenge facing the state of Iowa in 2026 moving into when you would take office in 2027?
That's a great question. There's a lot of challenges right now. I think the number one challenge I'm hearing across the state, and believe it or not, as connected as Iowa is. Iowa is connected. We've got networks, and it's the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of whomever. I am starting to realize that there's some disconnects out there. There's discord. There's fracturing within the Republican Party. There's fracturing within certain different advocacy groups within the Republican Party as well. We need better connection. We need better community across the state. And we need to make sure that we as a political organization, a political party, are listening to boots in the ground all across rural Iowa and even in parts of urban Iowa. We need better connection across the state. We need better ears and understanding so that we can make decisions that benefits all Iowans, not just a select few.
What are some of the issues that are creating especially a wide disconnect within your party at this time? And again, this has nothing to do with anybody who has been in office, because things hit critical mass when they hit critical mass.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the key issues where it's different whether you're in Shenandoah as opposed to Decorah, for example?
There are two issues that jump right out. The first one is the carbon sequestration pipeline. I do not believe eminent domain should be used for carbon sequestration in that pipeline. I'm not anti-eminent domain for purposes such as oil, natural gas, transmission lines. I think eminent domain should be used sparingly. But in the case of carbon sequestration, I do not believe eminent domain should be used. Now, I'm a free market capitalist, and so I would say if you can privately negotiate the contracts with farmers, let it rip, go for it. But eminent domain should not be used in that situation. That's created a divide within the Republican Party, as I'm sure you know, and many others are talking about. And the other issue is property tax. We are very divided in property tax. And one thing that I'm seeing right now, and I'm watching the House, I'm watching the Senate, I'm watching the governor's bill come out. But what I don't see is a ton of interaction with local rural communities with, okay, let's put a cap at 2%. If you put a cap at 2%, that may negatively impact a rural community that is budgeting and spending appropriately. So I don't think we should be making these blanket legislative policies that impact communities in a different way with downstream negative consequences if we're not having those conversations. So those are two that jump out right away, which I'm sure obviously you're familiar with.
Well, and if you look at the 2026 Iowa General Assembly, those are the two stumbling points that there's not even an assurance that we'll get anywhere on it. So let's go that direction.
Yeah.
Let's say there is no agreement on the eminent domain private property rights issue. Mm-hmm. You're governor in January of 2027.
Yeah.
How do you get the parties together? And again, for the recollection of the audience, the House and Senate passed a bill last year. The governor vetoed it.
Yep.
And now they're doing the dance again. So let's say you're governor. What about that issue?
Yeah, flat out, what I would do is pull the legislature together. And I would say, I need to see a bill revolving around carbon sequestration that needs one line. The one line needs to say eminent domain cannot be used for carbon sequestration. You can expand the corridor, you can privately negotiate, does not matter to me, but there needs to be a line that says eminent domain cannot be used for carbon sequestration. And I'm willing to not sign a budget until that hits my desk. And if that hits my desk, I will sign that bill immediately to make sure that our property rights are protected.
There are certain people who have Republican affiliation who are donors to campaigns who have a different view than that.
Correct.
That is as neutrally phrased as I can make it, but it is a neutral situation.
Yeah.
That causes pressure on a Republican, does it not?
Correct. No, it does. And I've had conversations with close relationships of mine that, there are a lot of investors in that pipeline. I don't know how many there are, but there are a lot of them. It's a very large project. And the way I approach it is, look, just remove eminent domain. And then go get it. Free market, let capitalism reign. That's been my background. Obviously, we'll talk about that. But there's no reason that we should be using the government for that situation for this project. And let's let the free market reign. Let's let investors put their money in and then privately negotiate these contracts with farmers, and we can all be on down the road.
The other issue is property taxes. The legislature tried, not all that many years ago, to effectuate some level of reform by shouldering the burden for mental health from counties. The idea was, well, the counties will pass those savings on to taxpayers, and some did very well and others didn't. So how do you address that issue? Because the word I get is, of all the bills, that might be the hardest one to get across the finish line in an election year.
That is exactly right. And it's exactly why I'm talking about creating blanket legislation across the state without being hyper local and understanding the downstream ramifications. And I'll point this out. I was up in Esterville last weekend, actually, and somebody showed me an article. And the headline was, "Property tax is the number one issue of this legislative session." 1996. So we've been talking about this for a long time. I wasn't paying attention to politics in 1990. I probably should have been. But what I have seen is property tax proposals and legislation that have regionalized different systems and different programs. And it's kind of over-regionalized. I was in Tama County the other day, and some of the regionalization that has happened when a mental health patient when the sheriff or police officer can't can't find a place for the mental health patient, they send them to the county jail to give them time. When they go into the county jail, they're under the property tax payment after that. And that was an oversight. And we need to fix those things. And what I told the sheriff and the chief of police down there is we need to look at what we have regionalized and take a more hyper-local approach so that we can figure out what decisions have been made that we can peel back and adjust so that rural communities don't suffer from larger pieces of legislation like that.
We're due for our break, but I want to hone in on this point. We have wonderful, wonderful rural areas. We have very nice cities, but it feels, as one who works in a city but lives in a rural area, that the split is becoming wider. How, as governor, can you effectually help those in big cities handle their needs while at the same time taking care of folks in my home area of Tama County where you just were?
Oh, I didn't know. That's awesome. I don't know how much time we have, but that's a big question. Number one, we need to figure out what value that local area offers. So here in the Cedar Valley, I toured with the CAPS program not too long ago, and they have taken an awesome approach of partnering with schools, and they teach and train kids into healthcare and different trades opportunities. And I told them, I said, hey, I want to take this and plug and play this in Northwest Iowa and Southwest Iowa. And they said, time out. They said, this works for this community. And they said, these are the skill sets in the area that this community has. And I said, that's a great point. So I can't over-regionalize my economic development strategy either. So every county has sets of gifts and talents and people and innovation opportunities. And we need to look at each area independently and figure out, number one, how can the government get out of the way? And two, how can we foster more innovation and entrepreneurship for local communities so that they can thrive without government getting in their way?
And we'll come back to the rural-urban situation as we continue with Adam Steen. He is a Republican candidate for governor. The website is adamsteen.com. More about his background when Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, continues.
All the great news talk programs you love from KXEL on your radio can be with you wherever you go.
I'm Todd Starnes.
This is Mark Levin.
I'm Tim Harwood.
Bill O'Reilly here.
I'm Kim Commando.
Hey, it's Glenn Beck.
I'm Jeff Stein.
Just download the free KXEL mobile app. You can find us in the App Store or Google Play. Make sure you never miss a second of the conversation. Download the KXEL app today. It's a great way to stay connected to where Iowa comes to talk.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mudd Advertising is hiring product specialists. $20 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year, plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $20 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
You're watching Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Here again is Jeff Stein.
And as Iowa Talking Points, the candidates continues, I'm joined by Republican candidate for Governor Adam Steen, adamsteen.com. Tell us about your background. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I am originally from Indianola, just south of Des Moines. For those that don't know, probably most people do. I spent my life wanting to be a baseball player. It's all I focused on. It's all I cared about. In 2002, I got a call on draft day. I was at Minnesota State Mankato, senior in college, and the Phillies said, "Congratulations, Adam. You're now part of the Phillies family." I became a professional athlete and a pitcher, and didn't realize that Division II up to the professional leagues, my fastball was just batting practice for the pros. And 2 short seasons in, they said, "Hey, you're no longer part of the family. Here's your plane ticket home." And I flew back to Des Moines in 2004. And was very fortunate that my father, who had 43 years investment banking experience, said, "I want you to join my company. I want you to learn how businesses grow. I want you to learn strategic partnerships, joint ventures." And I just grounded out with my father for 6 years and learned how businesses operated, how they grew. And then at 30 years old, I had a recommitment to Christ, recommitment to the Lord, and shifted my focus. And I started to focus more on how I could be a better servant leader, how I could be a better leader in the community, and took what I learned in investment banking and jumped into entrepreneurship. Started my own company, built a turkey decoy business. A friend of mine invented the product, and I took it and wrote the business plan, private placement, sourced the manufacturing and launched the product. It hit the shelves at every major outdoor retailer across the country, and met my wife, Casey, at a Panera Bread, and she and I met 8 months later. We were married. We got 2 boys, Riker and Maverick. They're just the joy of our life. There's a tremendous story with Riker. He was born 4th of July, 2015. At 4 months old, he was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder, and we were told he'd likely never walk, likely never talk. But a year ago, almost to the day, a boy who's not supposed to walk or talk at 9 years old walked up to a microphone at a church and delivered a 5-minute sermon in front of 500 people. So we're a family of hope. We're a family of grit, faith, determination, and we're a family that we're all in to impact the state of Iowa for as long as we can.
There are a lot of people in this race and others who cite faith as one of the foundations. How does that apply to you in your job and governance, and how would that guide you as governor of the state of Iowa?
Yeah. So I started studying my faith 15 years ago. Through my studies, I joined the Iowa School of Ministry and became a certified minister within the Assemblies of God network. So I'm technically a reverend because I don't pastor a church. But that faith journey and my understanding of my worldview through my study of the Bible and my commitment to the Lord, it shapes me, it forms me, and it helps guide my decision making so that my decisions are consistent and they're built on a foundation of truth. They're built on a foundation of faith, and that means that there are times when we have to realize like we can't force faith on people, but what I can do is I can make decisions that are led by what I feel are the right thing at the right time, and if I do that consistently, people will see that and they'll go, okay, that's somebody that I want to follow. But we live in a free country, so I will not force my faith on anybody. But if somebody asks me a question and says, hey, how did you get to the spot that you're in? I always point back to my faith, because that's where this whole thing started for me.
You mentioned in the prior segment that you left a job in state government in order to make this run. That job was as director of DAS, the Department of Administrative Services.
Yeah.
That's a nice job title, but I'll bet a lot of people watching are not sure what exactly that means. So as the director of DAS, especially over the last few years, that was a pretty pivotal time in state government.
It was a monstrous time in state government. And those who don't know what administrative services is within a state, when I was recruited into the position, I'd never heard of it either. So I was at a firm in West Des Moines, and governor's office recruited me into her cabinet for that role. And I said, what is DAS? What is this? And then I started to learn that administrative services oversees state accounting, state human resources, state procurement, so the purchases of goods and services, state investigations, major maintenance, all the guts of operational activities within the entire executive branch fell within my purview. I oversaw 350 people directly and 20,000 organizationally across the executive branch, and it was a monster. It was challenging every single day. There were new problems that were brought up. My department oversaw many of the largest efficiency projects and money-saving projects that the state has executed. Just one of them was alignment. So we used to have 37 agencies within the state. We now have 16. My department put the interworkings of all of those agencies together behind the scenes. So I got direct eyes-on access to how every single department within the state of Iowa's executive branch operates. And it was a wonderful training ground, a tremendous challenge, but we thrived. We did a fantastic job in that role. And I built a wonderful team. There's still a wonderful team there. So when I resigned and walked away from that, I told my team before I left, I said, I'm coming back, and we're going to continue to do the things that we're doing. We're just going to do it at a higher level. And I feel like they're excited for that. I feel like they're rooting me on. I still have employees that show up at different events that we do. And it was a wonderful job. I was great at my job. I did not want to resign, but I knew I had to preserve and protect the state.
Conflict of interest of working in state government while running for a job to run state government?
Correct. Yeah. No, so actually what was funny is my wife and I decided, we said, okay, there's no way I can do both of these. Because that job, I mean, 7:45 in the morning, nonstop challenge all day long. I mean, it's more than 40 hours a week. And I said, I'm not going to be able to do both of these things. Well, then I asked my general counsel at DAS, I said, can I even do both? And we looked at Iowa code, and technically, legally, I couldn't do it anyway, which makes sense. So we had decided we were going to resign. Then we knew we had to resign. So we stepped out of the boat and said, let's let this thing rip here. So
Is it too much? And I do not know the inner workings, but the governor had a plan for reorganization and alignment. The legislature passed it, and they just sort of walk away at that point. Somebody's got to implement it. It was the Department of Administrative Services that had to take what the legislature had prepared and put it into action.
Thus, the challenge with Department of Administrative Services. The legislature passed the bill, and then it became, okay, this is on your guys' shoulders. So we had to change accounting strings. We had to change job classifications. So we had to get to know the inner workings of every single department. And the larger challenges reached my desk. The smaller, medium-sized challenges, my team implemented and got done. I have a fantastic team there, like I said. We did all the inner workings, and we just do the biddings of the legislature when laws are passed. And it tended to work very well, regardless of what the situation was.
Where else can one go with this? Because again, there was the effort to streamline government. The governor then later convened a Doge caucus with a report. So what would you do as governor if it's necessary to take that even further? Yeah, no, absolutely. There are, so when you do a project of that scope and scale, there's always different opportunities that you can see along the way. And some things I identified, which I put on a list before I walked out the door. I would love to centralize financial reporting within the state. Now, I said that early on in the campaign, and no one really cared who cares? Well, then the fraud in Minneapolis was exposed. And if you don't have line of sight and how all the dollars are being spent, that can happen. So what I want to do is I want to centralize finance within the state of Iowa, more shared service model. I want to centralize all HR functions within the state of Iowa's executive branch. No one cared when I said that early until Dr. Ian Roberts was exposed as a poor hire for the Des Moines Public Schools. And I also want to bring procurement and IT back into administrative services. That department is a shared service department, which means you can consolidate services, create more efficiency and more money savings across all the executive branch. And I think we need to turn that into a bigger shared service department. That's just one thing that I would do. It would take time, but we could do it. Any more things to discuss with Adam Steen? He is a Republican running for governor. AdamSteen.com is the website, and we will continue the conversation in just a moment. Short break now, back on the other side on Iowa Talking Points, the candidates.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mud Advertising is hiring product specialists. $20 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $20 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
Watch all the programs in the Iowa Talking Points series online at iowatalkingpoints.com. Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, continues with Jeff Stein. And on this edition of Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, I'm joined by Adam Steen. Mr. Steen is a Republican, one of 5 Republicans running for governor in the June primary election. AdamSteen.com is his website. And I just mentioned that there are 5 of you who are on the ballot. First things first, somebody's got to win the nomination. Distinguish your background, your record, etc., from
your four opponents.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what I've been talking about all across the state, we've been traveling around for 7 months. It's been wonderful just meeting with Iowans at every step of the way. I've got 18 years as a business owner, 18 years in the private sector. So business is my primary background. Common sense, 101 business principles. I was able to take that business background, go inside of state government, and for 5 years ran the operations of state government. So taking a business approach inside of state government produced some of the best outcomes from the largest state projects that we've run. And so with that background, something I talk about on a regular basis, there are three things that the governor has to do very well, because I believe the governor is the CEO of the state. I look at things from a business perspective. And as the CEO of the state, there's three things you've got to do very well. And the first one is operate. You need to be able to operate the state and know how our tax dollars flow and come out as services on the other end. And from an operational perspective, there's not a resume that can stand up against mine. When I resigned my position, I turned in my badge, and I joke, but I'm dead serious. I just have to get my badge back. I can badge in, and I'm ready to run the state on day one. I know the players. I know the ins and outs of the operations. The second thing is culture. The CEO of the state is going to impact culture from top all the way to the bottom. And from my perspective, I believe that Iowans have grit. I believe we're tough. I believe we have hope, determination, faith. I believe that we need to be talking about that on a regular basis so that kids, as they're kind of roaming around their digital devices, all of a sudden realize, hey, we need to put the device down. We need to go outside. We need to work with our hands. We need to solve problems. And we need to start championing an attitude and a culture of grit across the state, because that's who we are as Iowans. We get up early. We go to bed late. We fix problems when we see them. We get dirty when we do it, and we get up and do it all again the next day. I'll be the largest champion of skilled trades. I think we have an unbelievable opportunity in the trades. That includes skilled trades we think about: welding, electric, plumbing, but also in healthcare, the trade of healthcare. We need to get those activities in front of kids at a younger age, 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade. Bring vocational studies and industrial arts back into the schools at a younger age. We need to champion that, creating public-private partnerships like the CAPS program that I mentioned. We need to make sure that kids are learning, hey, you may not be cut out for a 4-year university. You could get a job right out of high school, and you could achieve the American dream by the time you're 22 years old. So we need to do that. We need to champion communities, churches, nonprofits to rise up and start taking ownership in their community again. And for the love, get the government out of the way. Quit relying on the government for help. And so from a cultural perspective, I can't legislate that, but we can champion that. So the governor has to operate, has to understand culture. And lastly, the governor, as the CEO of the state, has to form and shape policy that fits Iowans. And so some of the things we talked about, we got to make sure our property rights are protected. We got to make sure our property taxes are in alignment and make sure that they're being stewarded appropriately. I think we need to go to a zero-based budget model across the state, all political subdivisions, all schools, even the executive branch, so that we can create line item budgets and transparency and accountability on the spend. From my perspective, that's what separates me from the other candidates. Even on the Democrat side, you're looking at somebody who's got not just experience, but detailed understanding of the day-to-day, so that we can take this state, we can move it forward, we can grow it, we can work through economic development channels, we can recruit businesses here, and again, create those public-private partnerships that provide jobs for Iowans to keep them here in the state.
So resume is obviously unique. Many of your opponents in this primary have held elective office at the State House, or in one case, State House and Washington. And I'm sure that they will say, well, I've been in the Capitol and I've worked on legislation, so now I can be the governor. To me, those are different skill sets. And I'm not just saying that because you've not been a lawmaker, but for those who say, well, I've already know where Capitol Hill is, and you do too, but why is that not enough? Shall we say?
Yeah, having been inside the belly of the beast and having seen how legislation takes shape. Now, one of the questions I got in the first debate was, you've never dealt with legislation. And I said, well, time out. That was a main component of my job, was taking what the legislature was working on and implementing it. So I would work with the legislature to make sure that policy fit with the operations of the state. And that's the key, is if policy is going to be created and policy is going to become law, or ideas are going to become law, it's got to fit with the operations of the state. And so again, I've done that and I've worked on that. So it's nothing against a politician, but one of the things the Democrats rose up against me on when I was first appointed by the governor, they said he's an outsider. He's a business guy. He's not a politician. And I wore that as a badge of honor. So I got confirmed by the Senate, barely, and then I operated for 4 years. I was reappointed by the governor after my 4-year term was up. And after the Democrats had seen how well I operated the state, I went back up for confirmation. I was confirmed 50-0 by Republicans and Democrats with no questions asked. They said, this guy knows how to run the state of Iowa, so we appreciate him in there. We're not going to ask any questions. Never happened before in the history of that department. But that's the difference between bringing a business person inside state government that also understands how legislation connects to services that Iowans deserve.
With regard to education, the Democrat nominee is not a fan of the education savings accounts, and is something that he's making a very large part of his campaign. And again, this is a primary, but you do know that will be a main issue. So talk about education, if you will, broadly, the state's role in funding it. We've had one of your opponents has told me he wants a world-class education system. All right. What would you do with education? Yeah, no,
we need to expand the ESA school choice program 100%. One of my big fears is should I not be the candidate, I'm not comfortable another candidate on the Republican side can beat Rob Sand. And I know Rob Sand is going to do everything he can to take out the ESA program. And that will decimate independent and private schools across the state. We cannot have that. And that's one of the main reasons I jumped in. That's preservation of our culture and our freedom. But we need to expand that program. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm against public schools. My 2 boys go to public school. What I'm against are the standards and requirements that are being forced down upon teachers that don't allow them to teach kids how they're going to learn. And I know that firsthand because my son Riker, he is forced upon these globalized, Common Core, ridiculous standards. And the teachers, we go to the conferences and like, well, we have to grade him on fluency in reading. He reads with 100% accuracy, 100% comprehension, but fluency isn't there because that's not how his body operates. And so, well, he's not meeting the standard. Well, he should. And we need to teach him in a different way. And so what I would like to do is I would like to expand public school access to include classical education. Give parents an option. Choose. Do you want to stick with the Common Core philosophy here, or do you want to offer them an opportunity of classical education, phonic-based education, critical thinking? And then what that will do, I believe, will create an opportunity for new industry across the state. So teachers are then going to need to learn classical education, and we can teach that in our universities. And I believe people will come into Iowa because they want to learn how to teach classical education, and then there will be jobs for them right here in the state. And oh, by the way, people say, well, you're crazy. Look at Mississippi. Mississippi switched to classical education within their state. They were 48th in the nation, and I believe it was 2 or 3 years after flipping to classical education, they're now 6th. This works. It changes the culture. It changes the style and attitude of kids on how they learn. That's what we need to expand. We don't need to sit there and say, oh, our tax dollars need to go for this. No. We need to provide an avenue for our kids to learn the way they're able to learn. And that's through classical education, and it's through pushing the ESA program forward into private and independent schools.
Is there not a problem with school boards who, and we have said to people, well, run for city council, run for school board. You can make a change. But I've heard from a number of school board members who say, I can't do anything. It's all prescribed from the top down. So how do we get past that? Yeah, we need to break the top. We have to decimate the top. And I'm not afraid to say that. We have in many cases at these higher levels in administrative positions, people making decisions that have never had classroom experience. That's a problem. When you're making those decisions from the top without knowing how it impacts the bottom, we see it in our family every single day. Again, my son has got an IEP. We use the AEAs. He's got a one-on-one at school. And we see the decisions that are made from the top that impact the resources at the ground level that don't allow them to operate. So we're not anti-teacher. We're not anti-public school. What I'm anti are these standards that don't make sense for our teachers and our children. Adam Steen is a Republican. He is running for governor. One more segment with Mr. Steen after this short break. This is Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Iowa has a wonderful heritage, and each day I'll share these stories of historic people and events with you. I'm Jeff Stein. Join me for the Iowa Almanac program and learn more about this great place we call home. Now 7 days a week. Listen on radio stations across the state, via podcast, or at iowaalmanac.com.
One opportunity. Change your career. Mud Advertising is hiring product specialists. $20 an hour, paid weekly. That's 52 weeks a year plus record-breaking profit sharing. Let me repeat, $20 an hour plus record-breaking profit sharing. But we're just getting started. The best in the business, 401k, company match, gold standard health plans, on-site fitness center, generous paid time off, and so much more. Apply today and don't look back.
You're watching Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Here again is Jeff Stein.
And a final few minutes with Adam Steen. He is a Republican, one of 5, on the June 2nd primary ballot for governor in the state. AdamSteen.com is his website. I brought up the fact that there is a Democrat who is already known to be in the race. In other words, there's no primary challenge. One of the things that people look at, of course, in determining who to vote for in a primary, issues, yes, but also electability. Now, you made the assertion, I opened the door to say, you're the only one who can beat Mr. Sand. Tell us why that is a distinguishing point as Republicans cast a ballot in June.
Yeah, there are really 2 factors, and one thing that I talk about is in many places that I can go. Again, having 5 years in Department of Administrative Services, part of my role was to work with the auditor's office, which, from my perspective, Rob Sand has been posing as an auditor for 7 years, and I say that because there are some meetings that he should have been at that were some of the most important meetings that the state will ever produce. And one of them was a meeting about the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It's the most important financial report that the state produces. My department at State Accounting Enterprise produces that report. We then work with the Treasurer's Office to make sure everything balances, and then we try to work with the Auditor's Office to get them to sign off and say, hey, these numbers are working, we look good, everything's fine. They played politics with that situation. They put us in a spot where it may have put the ACFR, as it's called, in jeopardy from being turned in late, which impacts the state bond rating, which impacts how expensive money is going to be for the state. He played politics with that situation, and proof of that is when he sent documents to the Des Moines Register and he said, hey, look at this, Governor Reynolds' administration is playing politics with this situation. But if you look at those documents, my name's all over those documents because my role oversaw that report. You will see my signature and sign off before anybody else's. I was not playing politics with that situation. And there are several other situations that I got involved in that I tried to work with his office on, but rather than doing his job, he played politics. And I long for the opportunity to ask him those questions because the challenge we've got right now is that he doesn't have a primary opponent. So he doesn't have to answer any questions. He can run around and talk about pizza and buffalo wings, and he doesn't have to answer challenging questions like, why did you play politics with the most important report that the state produces from a financial perspective? The second thing is we have a tremendous grassroots game right now. We've got a ton of organization across this state. We've got endorsements from Steve Dace, Bob Vanderplas, the family leader. I mean, they continue to roll in, and we have put forth a grassroots effort that connects us not just to the faith community, but also the business community. Again, I've got a faith background like other of my opponents, but I've also got a detailed business background. So I've got a wide lane in business. I've got a wide lane in the faith evangelical Christian conservative lane, and also through the younger generation as well. Through internal polling, the younger generation appreciates my message. They appreciate my enthusiasm. They appreciate my ability to connect with them on issues that talks about let's achieve the American dream. So on one end, my ability to defeat Rob Sand is legitimate and tactical through an operational and experiential perspective, but then also from a cultural sort of finger on the pulse perspective across the state. We are ready to rock and roll. We're ready to win this thing.
Well, you are asking Republicans to vote for you, and we have just a few minutes left. I'll let you address them directly.
I appreciate that. You're looking at a candidate that not just has operational experience, but has his finger on the pulse of the culture of Iowa. And when I jumped into this race, to preserve and protect the culture and the freedom of the state. I've made decisions. I've been knocked down. I've never stayed down. I've developed scars over my career. But I've always gotten back up, and I've always been willing to fight. And I fight for my family every single day. I fight for my wife every day, my 2 boys every single day. And my commitment to you, my commitment to Iowans, is that I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my family every single day. And I do that fearlessly. I'm unafraid. I will not back down, and I will preserve and protect the culture of Iowa. And we're going to look at Iowa. Iowa will be a shining light on a hill. When states like Virginia, Minnesota, Illinois continue to go down the tubes, they're going to look at Iowa, and they're going to say, how did you keep Iowa free? And we'll be able to answer that question, because we will be free. We will preserve and protect this culture. And so I ask for your support. God bless you. God bless the great state of Iowa.
Were you a left-handed or right-handed pitcher?
Unfortunately, I was right-handed. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
I was good.
Otherwise, I'd still be playing.
I thought if you were going to say you were left-handed, that was the only thing to the left about you. I was waiting for that.
Not even that.
Mr. Steen, thank you for the time and good luck on the campaign trail.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
He is a Republican running for governor, Adam Steen, and you find out more at adamsteen.com. And that brings us to the close of this edition of Iowa Talking Points, the candidates. Thanks so much for being with us.
This has been Iowa Talking Points, the candidates, produced by Studio 5 at Mud Advertising, Totally Iowa Media, and News Talk 1540 KXCL. For more information on this series, go to iowatalkingpoints.com.